The fluorescent light in courtroom 4B buzzed at a frequency I'd stopped noticing around month 14. My hands smelled like the hand sanitizer from the hospital, even though I hadn't worked a shift in 11 days. Across the room, my mother wouldn't look at me. She was looking at her lawyer's yellow legal pad instead, at a line item that read petitioner, primary caregiver status disputed. 19 months. 19 months to prove that changing someone's dressings at 3 a.m. counted as love. The bailiff called the next witness, and I recognized the voice that answered before I recognized the name. Someone in that gallery knew something none of us did. Welcome back to Calm Revenge Tales, where we tell the stories of people who waited, who stayed quiet, who did the work while no one was watching, and who got their justice anyway. If you believe patience isn't weakness, stay with me. And if you want the next story to find you, hit subscribe now. My name is Odalise Ferreira, and I've been a hospice nurse for 14 years. I own a 2-bedroom house in Fall River, Massachusetts, paid down to $61,000 on the mortgage, because I've never taken a vacation I couldn't pay for in cash. I built my life on 12-hour shifts, and the kind of exhaustion that teaches you exactly what matters. What mattered for the last 6 years was my great-aunt Providencia Mello, Aunt Provi to everyone who bothered to know her. She was 91, sharp as a paring knife, and utterly invisible to the rest of my family. My mother, Ilda, called her the old woman upstairs, even though Provi had raised my mother for 4 years after my grandmother died. To me, Provi was the only person who ever asked how my day actually went and waited for the real answer. I made her café con leche every morning. My mother sent her a Christmas card. The invitation came in March, typed on cream cardstock. My cousin Marisol's engagement dinner, hosted at my mother's house in Somerset. My mother called personally, which should have warned me. Bring Provi if you must, she said. But she eats before in the kitchen with Fatima, the housekeeper. We can't have her at the table confusing people about who's who during the toasts. I asked what that meant. My mother said Provi sometimes forgot names now, and it would embarrass Marisol's fiancé's family. I said Provi remembered every name in that family better than my mother did. My mother said, Odalise, don't make this difficult. The same words she'd used since I was 9 years old, and asked why Provi never got invited to anything. I accepted anyway. Provi wanted to go. She'd pressed her blue dress that morning, the one with the covered buttons, and she stood in front of the mirror for 11 minutes deciding whether her hair needed pinning. I raised that girl's mother, she told me, meaning my mother. I'm allowed at a table. I didn't have the heart to tell her about the kitchen arrangement. I thought I could manage it quietly, seat her myself before anyone noticed. The irony is that I spent the whole drive over rehearsing how to protect her from a room full of people who were about to prove, in under an hour, that she needed no protecting from ghosts, only from the living. The dining room held 14 people and a runner of white orchids down the center of a mahogany table my mother had refinished herself 20 years ago, back when she still worked with her hands instead of just judging other people's. I sat Provi at the far end, beside me, before anyone could redirect us. My mother saw it happen and said nothing, yet. Dinner moved through the soup course fine. Then Marisol's fiancé's mother, a woman named Celestina, asked Provi how she was related to the family, kindly enough. Provi answered clearly. She named my grandmother, the year she died, the address in New Bedford where she'd raised 3 children who weren't hers. My mother laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. She gets confused, my mother said, loud enough for the table. Don't mind her. Provi's hands went still on her napkin. She said, I am not confused, Ilda. I was there. My mother stood up. She said the sentence I will never stop hearing. Nobody asked the help for her memoir. The table went silent the way rooms go silent when everyone decides, together and without speaking, to look at their plates instead of each other. Celestina's face went pale. Marisol's fingers tightened white around her water glass. Nobody said a word in Provy's defense. 14 people, and not one of them. I stood up. I said, "She's not the help. She's the reason you have a family to seat at all." My mother told me to sit down or leave. I picked up Provy's cardigan from the back of her chair. I said, "We're leaving." And I made sure my voice didn't shake because Provy was watching me the way she always watched me. Like I was proof something in this family had turned out right. My mother said, "Fine. Don't bother coming back for Thanksgiving either." Marisol's fiancé's father, a quiet man named Bertrand who'd said maybe 6 words all night, half rose from his chair like he might speak. He didn't. I have thought about that half-second more than almost anything else in this story. I walked Provy to the car. She held my arm the entire way, steady, her chin level, refusing to hurry. The next 2 years ran on a budget I tracked in a marble notebook I kept in the kitchen drawer. Provy's Social Security covered $1,140 a month. Her supplemental insurance left a gap of $340 monthly for the medications her cardiologist wouldn't negotiate on. I picked up every extra hospice shift Fall River General offered, including the overnight rotations nobody wanted, at time and a half. I learned to cook for 2 on $85 a week. Arroz de Marisco stretched into 3 meals, day-old bread from the Portuguese bakery on Bedford Street that sold end-of-day loaves for $1. I never told Provy about the budget. She would have insisted on eating less, and I wasn't going to let dignity cost her calories. My mother called 4 times that first year. Each call had a price tag. "Come to Easter, leave the old woman with a sitter, and we'll talk about the house money again." My mother had once floated the idea of putting me back in her will if I stopped being difficult. I said no every time. Not coldly. Just clearly, the way you'd decline a medication that treats one symptom by causing 3 worse ones. There was a folder. Provy kept it in the drawer of her nightstand, manila, soft at the corners from handling, tied shut with a length of kitchen twine because the metal clasp had broken years before I met her. She never let me open it. "Not yet," she'd say, patting it once like it was a sleeping animal, and put it back. I noticed it first when I was organizing her medications in that same drawer. I noticed it again 8 months later when she asked me to move it to a fireproof box at the bottom of her closet. I noticed it a 3rd time the week before she went into the hospital for the last time, when she took it out, held it against her chest for a long moment, and said, "You'll understand when it's time." I didn't ask again. That wasn't how we operated. She'd earned the right to keep her own secrets, and I'd earned the right to trust she had reasons. On Sundays, when she was strong enough, Provy taught me her mother's recipe for sopa do Espírito Santo. The 2 of us standing at my small stove while she corrected my mint proportions by smell alone, no measuring. "Too shy with the mint," she'd say. "Be generous." Nobody remembers a shy soup. Those Sundays were the best hours of those 2 years, better than anything my family's dining room had ever produced, orchids and all. If you're watching this and wondering whether staying loyal to someone the world has written off is worth what it costs, I promise you, the rest of this story is the answer. Subscribe now, so it finds you. Provy died on a Tuesday in November, at 4:52 in the morning, in the bedroom I'd converted for her, with her hand in mine and the porch light still on because she never liked waking to full dark. She was 93. Her last coherent sentence, spoken 2 days earlier, was, "Tell them I remembered everything." Every name. I didn't know yet what that sentence would mean. I thought it was about the dinner. I was wrong about the scope of it, though not the truth. The letter came 6 weeks later, from a law office on County Street in New Bedford I'd never heard of, Raposo and Vieira, attorneys at law. It asked me to attend a reading of Providencia Mello's will and estate, on a Thursday at 10 a.m., along with any family members named as interested parties. My mother was there when I arrived, and Marisol, and my mother's brother Adalberto, and Celestina's husband Bertrand, oddly, sitting near the back like he wasn't sure he belonged. Nobody had told me he'd been named. Nobody had told me much of anything, which I would soon understand was the point. The attorney, a soft-spoken man named Mr. Vieira, opened with the manila folder. My folder. Provi's folder. He explained that Providencia Mello had, for years earlier, sold a parcel of undeveloped land she'd inherited from her own mother in 1958. 6 acres in Westport that a solar development company had purchased for $412,000. A fact she had disclosed to no one, structured through a trust her New Bedford lawyer had built specifically, so the money wouldn't be visible to family members who might come asking. The account had grown, conservatively invested, to $486,000. My mother's hand went to her throat. Adalberto said, "Too loud. That's not possible. She didn't have 2 nickels. And Mr. Vieira, without any heat in his voice, said the documentation would speak for itself. There was more. Provi had kept records, dated, notarized, meticulous, of every holiday she was excluded from, every year she ate in a kitchen while family ate in a dining room, every check she'd quietly written for tuition or hospital bills for family members who'd never thanked her by name. The folder held 31 years of it. She'd also kept records of every shift I picked up, every prescription I filled, every Sunday soup lesson. Not because she was keeping score against me, but because, as Mr. Vieira read aloud, she'd written, "Odalise never once asked what I had. She only asked how I was." My mother's composure went first, a single sharp sound, more performance than grief, hand pressed dramatically to her chest, though her eyes stayed dry and calculating even as her voice cracked. Bertrand, in the back row, looked down at his own hands for a long moment. He was the one who'd almost spoken at that dinner table. He looked like a man finally understanding what his silence had cost him a seat at. The will left $486,000 in full, to me, for the care given without condition, and the dignity extended without reservation. It left the manila folder itself, the original, to be read into the estate record, so that everyone in this room understands precisely what was seen, by someone they believed was not watching. And it left one final instruction, that the annual family Easter gathering, which Provi had funded quietly for over a decade without anyone knowing, the flowers and the ham and the good wine all traced back to her, would no longer be subsidized. My mother had spent 31 years treating Provi as furniture and had, without knowing it, been living partly off her money the entire time. I stood up when it was my turn to speak, because Mr. Vieira asked if I wanted to add anything to the record. I did. I said, "She told me, 2 days before she died, to tell you all she remembered, everything, every name." I thought she meant the dinner. She meant this room. I placed my hand flat on the folder on the table, the same gesture she used to make, patting it once like something sleeping. Nobody asked the help for her memoir, I said, using my mother's own words back to her, quiet, no anger in it, just fact. Turns out she wrote it anyway. Justice, in the end, wasn't loud. There was no lawsuit, no criminal complaint. My mother had crossed a line at a dinner table, not a legal one. The reckoning was simpler and more permanent. A documented, notarized, unbreakable record read into a public estate file, And a check that would never again require my presence at anyone's table to justify itself. Mr. Vieira asked, afterward, privately, whether I wanted to contest the smaller bequest Provi had left my mother. $4,000. For Ilda, who was once a little girl I loved before she forgot how. I said no. Let her have it. Cruelty was available to me in that moment, and I set it down on the table next to the folder and walked away from it, because Provi never once used what she knew as a weapon while she was alive, and I wasn't going to start using it for her after she was gone. My mother's fate settled itself. Marisol stopped returning her calls within the year, once the folder's contents worked their way through the family the way these things do. Adalberto, who'd built a small identity around being the reasonable one, couldn't explain why he'd never once defended Provi either, and the silence around that question cost him more than any argument would have. Bertrand sent me a letter, unprompted, admitting he'd thought about that dinner every day since. I didn't need his guilt, but I let him have it anyway. It seemed to matter to him. I still make the soup on Sundays alone now, though I've stopped being shy with the mint. I keep the manila folder in the same fireproof box, twine and all, in the closet of the room that used to be Provi's. Some mornings I still make 2 cups of café com latte out of habit before I remember, and I drink the second one anyway, slowly, at the small kitchen table where all the real conversations of my life actually happened. The inheritance was never the number in that account. It was learning from a woman my own family called invisible, exactly what a person looks like when they refuse to disappear. If this story meant something to you, here's the takeaway. The people everyone overlooks are usually watching more closely than anyone at the table. Call the person your family treats as furniture. Today, not next week. Ask them one real question, and wait for the real answer. If this story moved you, share it. Tell me in the comments who you're calling, and subscribe for the next one. I'll see you in the next one.